You fool! Warren is dead. The Halloween Experiment by Ian Gordon.
Overseer's Log, October 27th, 1976. Dr. Stephan Helm here. I'm upset, but I'm not deterred. Project Dilution continues today, with the odd case of Mr. Morris. An apple a day keeps the doctor away, or so they say. Morris, on the other hand, has been known to consume up to 12 apples a day, sometimes more. This odd compulsion, owing, it is suggested, to a lack of nutrition in his youth, has resulted in yet another curious delusion. Morris, the participant C, has been assigned to the green room, rather befitting an individual with a proclivity for Granny Smiths. Hello, Mr. Morris. Can you hear me clearly? Affirmative, Doctor. Can I get some light in here? Oh, yes. My apologies. Yikes. Oh, thanks. Now then, describe your surroundings, please. I'm in a green room. The walls are green. The tiles on the floor are green. Even the sink and toilet are green. Can you describe the shade of green?
It's a leafy green, the colour of a British summer. I don't want to say it, but I will anyway. It's an apple green. Intentional.
Do not trouble yourself with such matters at this stage, Mr. Morris. Instead, tell me your story. I'm eager to hear what happened to that arm of yours.
Well, what can I say? I've always had a fondness for apples. Always. Apple pie, poached apples, apple muffins, you name it. I grew up in the city centre and never left, not even on day trips with school. Was 19 by the time I saw my first apple tree. Bramley, you know. Was captivated by it. But my favourite apple, always, has been the Granny Smith. So green, so shiny, so sweet. My apple habit, if you want to give it a name, reached new heights last month in the Lake District. I get out of the city when I can, hate it, full stop. Unfortunately, I have, shall we say, trouble with open spaces. I'm fine cooped up in a cabin with a view, but not so much out in the wild. Goes back to childhood, no doubt. I'm better off living the life of a drone, sentenced to a life of warehouse management. But that's by the by. So, I was up in the lakes, as I said, cooped up in a congenial cabin by Coniston Water, enjoying a view of the mountains and my own company. On the second evening, end of September this was, there came a gentle rapping at the cabin door. You see, I wasn't expecting any visitors, so it was with a great deal of hesitation that I went to the door. There was nobody there by the time I answered it, but on the decking outside was a wicker basket filled to the brim with, you guessed it, Granny Smith apples. Pretty-doo. There was a note attached which read, "Sample our delicious Granny Smiths," and in smaller print beneath, "Remember to pace yourself." Although a little strange, I figured that the apples had been dropped off by the owner of the cabin as some sort of welcome gift. The likelihood was slim, but I couldn't come up with any other explanation at the time. So I took the basket inside, sat by the open fire, and tasted one of the apples. Doctor, it was divine, fabulously sweet, striking that perfect balance between crisp and tart, just how I like 'em. And I couldn't eat just one either. Throwing caution to the wind and completely discounting the note's pace yourself warning, I ate a second and a third, one after the other. I mean, I didn't think it was too outrageous. A day isn't a day for Alan Morris if he hasn't eaten at least half a dozen apples. Well, I washed the fourth one down with a cup of tea and sat back in the big chair by the fire, thoroughly pleased with the day's good fortune. I drifted off shortly afterwards. When I awoke, it was dark outside, and I could hear the first drops of rain striking the trees overhead. I gathered my faculties and made myself another cup of tea. Though I'm not a fan of being caught out in a thunderstorm, I'm a sucker for the light show if I'm safely indoors with a view. Yes. Soon enough, the rain was coming down in buckets. High above the cabin, the mountains appeared little more than dark, sinister shapes, and Coniston Water below resembled a vast, murky pool, sporadically illuminated by flashes of lightning. It was a beautiful, if a little eerie, sight to behold. And, of course, in celebration of the event, I grabbed myself another Granny Smith from the wicker basket and chomped on it keenly. It was then that I first heard the voice. It was a small, high-pitched voice coming from somewhere above me. At least, that's how I perceived it to begin with. It whispered, "One more'll do it, matey, just one more." I heard the voice over and over again, repeating the same words. Above the din of the showers and the clap of the thunder, I heard it droning. I tried to work out precisely where it was coming from, but wherever I wandered in the cabin, it was right there, right above me, whispering, "One more'll do it. Come on, matey, just one more." I knew for sure that it was referring to the apples, knew that it wanted me to tuck into my sixth Granny Smith. Why was that? What was so significant about eating half a dozen as opposed to 5? Now, it's fair to admit, Doctor, that I've heard voices before. I know that they're in my head, and I know that I shouldn't take any notice. It was the voices that talked me into pushing Eric James into the canal, the voices that instructed me to punch Philip McMinn in the face, the voices that have all but convinced me that the great outdoors are unsafe, that I'm better off in the city, surrounded by the smog and the unfriendly faces. But this voice, Doctor, this voice wasn't in my head. It was just above it, floating in the air, following me around the cabin, like a ventriloquist targeting me from the shadows. "One more'll do it," it kept on in that same immutable tone of voice. "Just one more." So I gave in, Doctor, just gave in. Above the roar of the thunder, I yelled, "Okay, okay, anything to shut you up." And as I approached the wicker basket by the fire, the voice did indeed stop its incessant chirruping. I grabbed one of the shiny apples, held it up before my eyes, and stared at it. What was I hoping to discover by studying it? The answer to some mysterious riddle? A reason as to why a disembodied voice was pestering me? I don't know, Doctor. I've never been too good at dealing with such things. I get confused. I'm easily goaded, you see. William Yeats, with very little effort, persuaded me to draw rude words on the blackboard. Alison Sharple said it would work out just fine if I tripped Mrs. Cox as she walked into the classroom. And Nigella Hayes swore that I'd feel better after drinking that cold tea that turned out to be puddle water. Anyway, I tucked into the sixth Granny Smith and devoured the whole thing, seeds and all, in a matter of seconds. A loud clap of thunder sounded, and I heard that shrill voice again. But this time it sounded muted, sort of like it was speaking from within the confines of a cardboard box. It said, "Good, good, that'll do it, matey." And then I realized that the voice was emanating from the confines of something. It was emanating from the confines of my body. I felt it as much as I heard it. An unmistakable series of vibrations moving through my blood and bones. I wondered then who it was that had delivered the apple, why they had been delivered, and if that person had been out to get me in some way or other, why the warning? "Remember to pace yourself," the note had read. And then the cramps, the crippling cramps. I fell to the floor, convulsing in pain, and with every agonizing second that passed, the storm without increased in ferocity. "What have you done to me?" I yelled, nobody in particular. "What have you done?" But I heard the shrill voice no more. Its source was inside me now, and I could feel it stretching its tendrils out into my extremities. Nightmarish wisps reaching into my fingertips and toes. Whatever it was trying to take me over, Doctor. Right then, I was overwhelmed by a sharp pain in the index finger of my left hand. I glanced down and saw that something had popped out of the end of it. Something dark and twig-like, sprouting with the rapidity of a blade of grass observed in a time-lapse video. I panicked, Doctor. Just panicked. With a great deal of effort, I climbed to my feet and raced to the kitchen in search of a blade. I found the meat cleaver immediately. I stretched out my monstrous arm, lifted the cleaver in the air, and, with all the force I could muster, brought it down on my elbow joint. It took a few swings, Doctor, because it wasn't just flesh and bone I had to hack through. I had to hack through that stick, too. That branch that presumably had its roots somewhere in my chest. I don't remember much after that. I blacked out. The owner of the cabin found me, and I have the storm to thank for that. A telegraph pole was struck by lightning outside. The thing collapsed and took out the front door. Serendipity, don't you think? Woke up in hospital the following day, groggy and missing my left arm at the elbow. No sign of the twig, though. Nothing unusual reported by the doctors, either. But I tell you now, I swear to you now, that I still hear that voice sometimes. "One more'll do it, matey," it says. "Just one more." I think I weakened it somehow when I hacked my arm off. Put the fear of God into it. I mean, it wouldn't want me to go kill myself, would it? What would it do then? I reckon it thinks that it might be able to get the better of me again if I fill my belly with a few more of those seeds. Seeds from those Granny Smiths, the origin of which I still to this day am none the wiser about. Well, what do you think, Doctor? Delusion?
Could it be that simple? Your story is certainly an interesting one, Mr. Morris. But I am convinced without a shadow of a doubt that your inner demon is a delusion. Such things simply cannot be.
One more'll do it.
What? What did you say?
See? You heard it, didn't you? You did, didn't you?
I heard you whisper something under your breath, Mr. Morris.
That wasn't me, Doctor. That was it. That was...
Me, matey. Only me.
There is just no possible way that this... Mr. Morris is gone. Disappeared. Managed to escape somehow. I'm at a loss to explain it. Nor can I explain the presence of foliage in his cell. Crisp green leaves and apple seeds? This is getting ridiculous. Helm out.
Thanks for listening today. Join us again tomorrow for part 4 of the Halloween experiment. If you enjoyed listening today, be sure to subscribe to the channel by hitting the red subscribe button below. After doing so, click the bell icon next to the subscribe button to receive new content notifications. If you'd like to support our work and receive exclusive perks, consider becoming a channel member by clicking the join button below. To support us in other ways, see the video description for links to our Bandcamp and Patreon pages, our merch store over at Teespring, and further information relating to our releases on Audible, iTunes, and Spotify. And until next time,